Hi there, this is Mrs McTaggart. In this video we're going to be looking at the National 5 topic of backwards volume or reverse volume questions as I call them. Now I've done this video twice but using two completely different methods. This method is going to be the one where we start with the formula, plug in our numbers and then rearrange what we've got to find the unknown. Now quite often I teach volume embedded with the certain shape, so if I'm teaching volume of a sphere I will put in a backwards one at the same time. But what I've found is some of my classes this year need a wee bit of just consolidation on this method alone because it is trickier than straightforward ones where you just have to find the volume. So if this is a method you use, give it a watch, but be careful, it might not be the method you've been shown. That might be the other video. So let's go. So in this question we have a pyramid. Now I'm going to go straight into the formula for a pyramid, which is V equals 1/3 AH. Okay, now the base is a square because both sides are 9. So the area of the bottom is 9 times 9, which is 81. So what we do here is we plug our numbers straight in. The only thing I'm going to do that might be a bit different is I'm going to stick the volume over to the right hand side because I know from experience pupils like to have the unknown working down the left. So we know that we did 1/3 times 81 times the height and we got the answer of 162. So all I've done is I've moved that volume over to there. Now that's step 1, substitute in. Step 2 is do what you can with the numbers. So I'm just going to underline what I'm doing. So at the moment I can do 1/3 of 81. Now you can either do it in a calculator or if you've really good mental math skills, that's 27. So we end up with 27 times the height equals 162. Now we want the height on its own, so we need to do the opposite of times over 27. So we end up with 162 divided by 27. And if you type that in your calculator, you will get an answer of 6. If this was non-calculated, maybe have to simplify that down, maybe trying to divide by 3 and see if it could simplify. But I think this would be a calculator question. So the height of the pyramid is 6. And a quick check, which is always possible once you think you've got the answer. If I do 1/3 times 81 times 6, well that's 27 times 6. 27 times 6, well that's very roughly 30 times 6, 180. It's 162. You can always plug it back in and check that it gives you the volume that they gave you in the question. So that's just a little check that you could do. So that is a pyramid. My second one is a sphere. So I thought rather than just do a sphere, I would do a hemisphere and make it a little bit trickier, okay? So we're going to start with the formula. So a hemisphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. And then that's a full sphere, so we stick on a divide by 2 because it's a half one. Now other teachers might just make that 2/3 pi r cubed. Other teachers might also tell you, well, just double the volume and think what the volume of the full sphere would be. But I am using the method that I do, which is sphere divided by 2. So we're going to plug in what we know. There's nothing to know in this one. We don't know the radius. So I'm just going to rewrite this out and put in the volume. So I've got 4/3 times pi times r cubed divided by 2. And we know this gives us 1523. So for nothing else, that would get you a first mark. Now we're going to do the numbers bit. So I'm going to do all the bits that I can on the left-hand side, which I've underlined. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to do 4 divided by 3 times pi, and then I'm going to divide that by 2, and it gives me this as a decimal. It gives me 2.094. Now that keeps going and going, so I do a couple of dots to show that I'm not rounding this. I'm using the exact answer. It's still sitting on my calculator screen, and that gives me times r cubed, and that gives me 1523. I then need to undo the times in by this decimal. So r cubed will be 1523 divided by this decimal. Now, if you are going to round, please do 3 decimal places. If you do round into 1 decimal place or 2 decimal place, you might accidentally lose marks for doing a thing called premature rounding. So I would urge you to keep it exact. You've got calculators with an answer button or at least 3 decimal places for accuracy. Now if you go type this in, it gives you r cubed equals, so I'm just doing 1523 divided by my answer button, and it is giving me, I need to make a wee bit more room here, it is giving me the answer of 727.178, and it goes on and on and on. To undo r cubed, you do the cube root of this number. Now your cube root button is a bit awkward to find. It's above your square root button. So I'm doing shift, square root button, and it comes up with a cube root. And then I'm pressing my answer button to use that exact answer. And it's given me 8.992. So 8.992 is safe to say, well, that goes to 9 centimetres. So the radius I actually used here was 9 centimetres. Now this method looks like an awful lot of working, I'm afraid, but that's just the way it is. It wouldn't be so difficult if I didn't have the divide by 2 on there to start with, but yeah, sphere has got a wee bit more work into it. Okay, let's look at the next shape. So now I've got a cone. I'm actually going to do 2 examples with a cone because there's 2 scenarios for a cone. You can either find the height or you can find the radius. I'm starting with height because that's easiest. So formula for a cone is 1/3 pi r squared h. So let's plug in what we know. We know 1/3 times pi times, well, my radius here is 7 because my diameter is 14. So pi times 7 squared times height, which we don't know, gave me an answer of 821. Now, if nothing else, your first mark is for plugging in your radius, for plugging in your radius and your volume. That's got you 1 mark. Next step is do what numbers you can. So we can do 1/3 times pi times 7 squared, which gives us 51.31. It goes 3126. So I'm just going to write ... times height equals 821. So 3 dots show that I'm using my exact answer. It's still on my calculator screen. Again, if you're going to round, do 3 decimal places for me to try and keep it as accurate as possible. I now need to undo the times and by the 51 decimal. So I'm going to divide by that number. So 821 divides by 51.312 ... And I'm going to do 821 divided by answer button on my calculator, and it gives me 15.9999, which is safe to say I used 16 centimetres for my height. Again, a quick check on your calculator. Go back and do 1/3 times pi times 7 squared times 16. Check you get the 821 that I gave you in the question. Because remember, someone has plugged in numbers to get this answer. So when you think you have it, plug it back in and check you get the same answer. It's actually really simple, but a lot of people forget that they can do a check. And if you get extra time in the exam, it's something I would encourage you to do. Okay, last shape. Still a cone, but this time it wants a diameter. Now, diameter isn't part of my formula, but radius is. So we're going to find the radius in this one and hence get the diameter. So we're going to start with V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. We're then going to plug in our numbers. So 1/3 times pi times my radius squared, because I don't know my radius, times 18 gave me 382. We're going to do the number work, so I can do 1/3 times pi times 18. I like to just underline it so pupils can see what I'm doing. So I've got 1/3, 1 divided by 3, easy on your calculator, times pi times 18 gives me, excuse me, 18.849. So I've got 18.849 ... times r squared gives me 382. R squared then is 382 divided by the 18 number. So divided by 18.849. Remember, I'm using it exact. So I am doing 382 divided by my answer button. And it gives me 20.265. Continued. Now remember, the last thing to do here is take the square root. So r will be the square root of that answer. Obviously, don't always put all these lines in, but if I was doing this as my classwork notes and writing back, I'd like to see that I took the square root. So square root of your answer gives you 4.501. So I think it's safe to say 4.5 centimetres. None of my questions have mentioned rounding, so there we go. So that's me done. Okay, I've shown you all the different scenarios you could be shown other than a full sphere, but I thought I'd just make it a wee bit harder for my examples. There are a couple of examples if you want to pause this video and try on your own. So here's another 6. The unknowns are the things in red and the volumes are the writing in blue. Try some of these if you want. Pause the video, have a look. When you're done, unpause the video. And when you unpause them, that should hopefully be what your answers are. I hope this has helped and thank you very much for watching.